From the moment the city lights blinked awake under the bruised dawn sky, something felt wrong, terribly wrong. The world of power and perfection that surrounded her was about to shatter, and no amount of money, influence, or prestige could stop it. Witnesses would later say the collapse seemed unreal, as if the universe had frozen for a second before dropping a tragedy no one saw coming. A woman who had built empires, who commanded boardrooms with the force of a storm, suddenly lay helpless among the cold pavement, her breath fading like a dying ember. And somewhere miles away, a man who could barely afford bus fare, a man unknown, unnoticed, and unimportant in the eyes of the world, was unknowingly on a collision course with destiny, one that would demand from him something he did not even know he still had. Call to action number 1. If you believe in kindness, miracles, and second chances, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. It helps us bring more inspiring stories to you. At 7:12 a.m. that morning, the life of Alina Qureshi, CEO of Northstar Biotech, took a devastating turn. Cameras caught her leaving her building as she always did, graceful, decisive, surrounded by security. But within seconds, her steps wavered, her face turned pale, and her hand clutched her chest as though an invisible fist squeezed her heart. She collapsed in front of her staff, her fall echoing like a warning through the silent courtyard. Sirens wailed, panic erupted, and before the world could catch its breath, the woman known for saving countless lives through her medical innovations suddenly couldn't be saved by the very field she championed. Doctors rushed her into emergency care. The hospital hallways buzzed with fear, nurses moving fast yet carrying eyes full of defeat. The diagnosis was grim, a rare cardiac complication paired with sudden organ failure, the kind that textbooks barely covered. Specialists from different countries were called. Machines beeped desperately, trying to hold onto a life that was slipping away like sand through clenched fists. Her powerful board members gathered outside the ICU, whispering prayers they never knew they remembered. But no matter what they tried, her condition deteriorated. The doctors spoke in lowered tones, their words heavy with dread. She might not make it through the night. Across the city, in a cramped single-room apartment with peeling paint and a ceiling fan that clicked with every rotation, lived a man who had never heard her name. His world revolved around simpler, heavier things, rent, groceries, and the fragile health of his little daughter. His name was Imran. A mechanic by trade, though he barely earned enough to call it a profession, he spent his days fixing broken engines and his nights praying his daughter wouldn't cough herself awake again. The room always smelled faintly of oil and turmeric. His life was hard, exhausting, and perpetually uncertain. But in his daughter's fading smile, he found enough strength to do it all again, day after day. 8-year-old Sarah had been born with a rare blood condition, one that required expensive treatments Imran could never fully afford. Her tiny frame, her breathless laughter, her courage despite constant fatigue, all of it carved him open every single day. He often worked late into the night, hands blistered, vision blurry, but he never managed to gather enough for the treatments she truly needed. Still, he believed that God watched over the quiet, invisible battles of the poor. Even when his hope thinned, he clung to it like a lifeline. That same morning, after sending Sarah off with a tired smile and a warm kiss on her forehead, he headed out for work. Rain clouds gathered early, soaking the alleys and slowing traffic. He rode his old motorcycle, more rust than metal, toward the workshop. On the radio, the news broke about the CEO. Though he listened without much interest, one sentence pierced through his morning fog: doctors are urgently seeking a rare blood donor with an extremely scarce match type, chances are near zero. He shook his head sympathetically for a stranger he'd never meet and continued his ride. Hours later, after struggling through repairs, arguing with his landlord, and enduring a feverish call from Sarah's school asking him to bring her home early due to weakness, he made a decision. He needed to take her back to the hospital, even though he dreaded the bills. Carrying her small, burning body in his arms, he rushed to the nearest government hospital, praying the line would be short. But destiny sometimes plays its cards with quiet precision. While waiting for Sarah's turn, a nurse rushed in, speaking urgently to the head physician. Something about the CEO's case, something about the blood type search. Imran barely paid attention until he heard the doctor say, "We've tested nearly every potential donor. No match. And without this rare type, she won't survive the next few hours." Curiosity nudged Imran. Almost absently, he asked what blood type they were looking for. When the nurse told him, he froze. He knew that type. Very few people had it. He happened to be one of them. His heart hammered against his ribs, not because he cared about a CEO, but because fear gnawed at him. If he donated blood now, who would help Sarah later? His health wasn't strong to begin with. His body already ran on exhaustion. He worried that giving blood might weaken him, might leave him unable to work tomorrow, might mean skipping a day's wages. And a day's wages often meant skipping dinner. But then he looked at Sarah, pale, fragile, her head resting limply against his shoulder. He remembered the nights she hugged him and asked if he would still be there when she woke up. He remembered how helpless he felt each time her strength faded. And in that moment, something stirred inside him, something small yet powerful, empathy for someone else's child, someone else's fear. He understood too well what it meant to watch a loved one slip away while you stood powerless. Life, regardless of wealth or status, was still life. He stepped forward. His voice trembled as he said, "Test mine." Within 20 minutes, the medical staff gathered around him in shock. His blood was a perfect match, an almost impossible match. They explained the urgency, how every second mattered, and how the CEO's life depended on it. Imran nodded without hesitation now. They led him into a small room, hooked him to the machines, and began collecting blood. As the crimson lifeline flowed out of him, he closed his eyes and prayed, not for himself, not even for her, but for the universal balance of kindness. If this sacrifice saved her, maybe God would look kindly upon his daughter too. Hours passed. His body weakened. His vision blurred. But the doctors rushed the blood to the private hospital where Alina lay fighting for her last breath. Specialists worked with a renewed sense of hope. The transfusion began, and slowly, miraculously, her vitals stabilized. The faintest flicker of life returned to her pulse. By midnight, the impossible happened, she opened her eyes. The entire city celebrated her survival the next day. News channels buzzed with phrases like miracle donor, life-saving hero, and divine intervention. But no one knew his name. He had walked out of the hospital unnoticed, holding his dizzy head, focusing only on getting Sarah home safely. No cameras. No applause. Just a single father carrying the weight of another day. Meanwhile, Alina, weak but conscious, learned everything. Her board members explained how a working-class donor had saved her. She asked for his information, but the hospital had none. He'd left without filling out any forms. She felt a strange emptiness knowing that a stranger had saved her life in total silence. While recovering in her private suite filled with flowers and cards, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, a sense of gratitude mixed with humility. Her empire had been built on science, strategy, and relentless ambition, but her survival now rested on the kindness of a man who had nothing to gain. She couldn't shake the thought. Days later, fate intervened once more. During a board visit to the government hospital for a donation campaign her company supported, she noticed a familiar voice, faint but warm, coming from a cramped room. It was Imran, speaking gently to Sarah, encouraging her to be brave as the doctor examined her. Something drew Alina toward them. When she approached the door, she saw the same man the hospital had described, the man with tired eyes, rough hands, and a humble posture, yet carrying so much love in his expressions. She didn't need confirmation. She felt it. This man had saved her life. She waited until the doctor stepped out, then entered the room quietly. Imran looked up in confusion at the elegant woman standing before him. She introduced herself softly, her voice heavy with emotion, telling him she was alive because of him. He tried to brush it off with embarrassed humility, but her eyes filled with tears. She told him how she had spent her life believing that power built walls, not bridges, yet here he was, a bridge she never saw coming. As they talked, she learned about Sarah's condition. Learned about the treatments he couldn't afford. Learned how he worked 3 shifts just to keep her medicine stocked. And in that moment, her gratitude turned into something deeper, responsibility. Within a week, she arranged the best specialists to examine Sarah. Treatments that once seemed unreachable were now covered entirely by North Star Biotech under a special humanitarian program she created herself. She offered Imran a job, stable salary, benefits, fixed hours, so he would never have to choose between work and his daughter's health again. At first he resisted, feeling unworthy, but she insisted. She told him that he had given her a second chance at life, and she wanted to return the gift, not out of charity, but out of honor. Months passed, and Sarah's health improved dramatically. The color returned to her